Okay, now we've got our exchanges set up, we've got our search service configured to consume a message, so now we need to go to our auction service so that we can actually publish a message. And let's close all of this stuff at the top down, and we need to go to our auctions controller because that's where we're creating the auction, and we're just focusing on the create auction at the moment. And inside here, once our auction has been created, we need to publish a message. Now we're just going to focus on the happy path because the way that we're going to do this, you're going to think, well, what happens if blah blah blah, and we're going to talk about that in the next lesson, but for now we're just going to focus on what happens when things are up and running and it just works. So in order to publish the created auction, well, first of all, we're going to need to map it into an auction created object. So that means we're going to head over to our mapping profiles inside the auction service, and we need to go from an auction DTO to the auction created. I know it feels like we've got many classes that have the same properties that are doing, or many classes that just have the same properties, but there's no way around this because this auction DTO cannot be known what it is by the search service. So we have to have something in between, and that in between thing is the contract, which is the auction created. The search service knows about this, the auction service knows about this. If we were using a different technology, we would need to create an object that matches the properties exactly that's inside this contract, regardless of the technology we're using to connect to the service bus. So we cannot use our auction DTA for anything else other than what we're using it for in the auction service. So we have to have an in-between class, if you like, this one here, which is going to be used by both different services. So let's go and take a look at our auctions controller now that we have that mapping in place, and what we'll do is we'll inject something from mass transit to allow us to publish that message, and what we use for that is the iPublish endpoint, and we'll call it publish endpoint, and we'll initialize this field using the create and assign field publish endpoint, and let's just move this down. Okay, so where do we use this inside our create auction method? Do we do it before we've saved changes to our database? Do we do it after we've saved changes to our database? Because then we know that we're going to have the ID. In fact, we have to wait until after we have the ID from the database. So that means we can't use it here. And already you're probably thinking, well, hold on a minute. If I've saved this into the database and we've created an auction and the service bus is down or the search service is down, what's going to happen? And those are excellent questions that I'm going to save until the next lesson, because for now we're just going to focus on the happy path. So first of all, we're going to need to map this into something we can use. So we've got mapping down here to go into an auction DTO. So I'm just going to copy this code here, and I'm going to create a new variable called new auction, and I'm going to set this to an auction DTO. And now we have this shaped as an auction DTO, we can then publish this, and we'll say await, and we'll use our publish endpoint, and we'll use the publish method, and then we just need to map this into an auction created object. So once again, we'll use mapper.map, and this time we're going to auction created, and we're going to pass in the new auction. And instead of using the mapper functionality down here, now we can just use the new auction, which is an auction DTO, and what we're publishing is going to be published as an auction created object. And we can see that if we hover over the publish method, then that's what this type has been set to based on the type of the object we're using as an argument inside here. And the publish method publishes a message to all subscribed consumers for the message type as specified by the generic parameter. And we can use a second parameter to customize the outgoing publish context and set things like headers on the message. We don't need to do that. we can simply publish this as it is. So that looks good. And let's just restart the auction service, possibly if we need to. It doesn't say I do, but just in case, I'm going to use .NET Watch to restart the auction service just to make sure there's no problems. And we can see that we've got a notification here to say that Mass Transit has or does have a connection to RabbitMQ, which means that when we do create a new auction, then that message is going to be published. So a couple of things to keep an eye on. I don't have much screen real estate when I'm recording, but a couple of things you might want to keep an eye on is the exchanges. When a new message is created for the auction created, you should see some activity over here. It's pretty fast and you're not going to see a lot of detail. And on the queue as well, if you go into the queue, you'll see some activity inside here. So we're going to use Postman, of course, to test this functionality. Let's clean this up at the top and not save changes for that one. And we're going to go to section 4. Ignore the stuff going on in the checkpoint for now. And we just want to take a look at the new auction creation. And if we take a look at the body inside here, then we've got lots of random stuff going on. We've got a GUID for the model name. We've got a random color for the color. We've got a random int for the mileage. Same for the reserve price and a random date. But I've kept the same image for these and the same year and the same make. This just makes it easier by using a GUID for the model name to genuinely confirm that the search service has received the message, because when we take a look at the next request, then we're looking for the created item model, and as long as it matches that GUID, then we'll get one item back, so we can confirm that the item has been created in the search service via the service bus. So that's the goal anyway. So let's take a look and see if we can create a new auction. So I'm just going to click send on this. We do have a bunch of tests, by the way, and we're setting more and more collection variables as we go along, just so that we can confirm what it is that we're doing has worked. Anyway, let's go to the body and let's click send. And we get a 201 created, so that was successful. If we go take a look at RabbitMQ, then we do see some activity. And we can see that a message has gone through the search auction created queue, and we can see a bit of activity up here for the contracts auction created as well. So that means something's happened. So what we can check is we're expecting to see a new auction created with this GUID as the model. And I've used a GUID here because to get something from the search service, we can't really just get an item by ID. We didn't configure it to work that way, so we have to search for something. So I'm just going to click the get item with the created item model and click send, and we can see that we have inside our search service this new item created, which confirms to us that what we have done is working, at least for the happy path. And if the path was always a happy path, that would be the end of our journey with RabbitMQ and Service Bus, but it does get a bit more complicated than that. I see I'm failing a test result here, and it looks like the test needs to be updated, so that should be JSON-data.results, and the first item in that list, and this should be JSON-data.results. So I'll just update these tests. It should be fine on the one that you're using. I'll click send again, and this time we get success. Because the response, the item is contained in an array, even though there's just one of them. Okay, so now we've confirmed that's working. Let's go take a look at the unhappy path in the next lesson.